I would like to welcome you all to WCA's September 2025 second Saturday session. Title of the program today is Getting Help, Creating Your First Activist Art Exhibit with Gwen Andersen. Gwen Andersen is both a photographer and a renewable energy specialist. Andersen has worked in international development for over 30 years and has just co-founded the A Energy Company, which is continuing USAID's work to electrify Africa. She began photography while in Mozambique in 2018. Her project, Becoming Ourselves, has been shown in 5 churches in Maryland and Virginia, the Glen Echo PhotoWorks Gallery, and the Third Space, a synagogue in Baltimore. So, welcome, Gwen.
Thank you. I'd like to say that it's about to be shown at Sandy Spring Meeting House, and we have Susan Brown on the line if you have any questions at the end for that. Thank you so much for having me. I'm overjoyed to be doing this. Obviously, if it weren't for WCA, this show wouldn't have happened. So much luck came into this show happening. And I love that the theme, that the title is Getting Help, because I got so much help in doing this. And it was the difference between it happening and it being effective and it's not happening. I had dinner with my friend Miriam, who wanted me to show her sister Marion my pictures. I got specifically the cute animals from Africa. But then she liked them so much, I said, oh. And then I showed her something else I had done that involved UV body paint and black light. And and she was blown away and said, you should have your own show. And I thought that was so sweet. I was so complimented, but she meant it. And she had me meet Sandra Davis. Oh, wow. Okay. So I pulled together some of the pictures that I thought were the best, and I have dinner with Sandra Davis, and I show her the pictures. And then Sandra Davis said, you should have a show. You have something to say. And I drove home that night and went, what do I have to say? But that summer, one of my friends had been grief-stricken because her child, a 10-year-old, had just been cut off from a whole segment of her friends. A whole segment of her friends sent a text saying, I don't want to be your friend anymore, and then blocked her. And then the next friend, I don't want to be your friend anymore, and blocked her. And so everybody blocked her, which meant she had no way of finding out why. And imagine this is happening to your 10-year-old. You can't fix it. You can't make other people like your kid. And if you're a member of a group that is stigmatized, you always assume that that's why people are turning on you or being mean to you. So her mother was just wrecked with grief. They were assuming that it was because the daughter was trans. I later found from my friend Miriam, no, 10-year-old girls just suck. So it may not have been that, but that's what they thought it was. And so I think that memory is what occurred to me. And I decided that we needed positive representation to counter all the negativity that was going on at that point. I think we had, at that point, over 400. And by the time I had the pictures ready, it was over 500 new attempts to pass hostile legislation against trans people. It was in the news constantly. It was just nonstop. And when I was young, a young lesbian, we glommed on to every positive representation that was out there. If it was in a book, if it was a magazine, if it was a newspaper article, if it was an artist, then we were there. We were all there. We needed every single one of them. So I thought, if we have some positive representation, that would be helpful. And Sandra mentored me every step of the way. One of the things that Sandra said was, you need to write a proposal. So I wrote a proposal, and I looked up on the internet what an art proposal is and what the questions were. One of the questions was, what's the need and why would this project help? And how would you know? And that one was hard because how would I know? How do you measure the effectiveness of art? One of the things that I did was I had a little survey at a lot of the places where we were holding the show. And it was a very simple survey. Are you glad you came? Are you glad this was held? comments. And the comments made it very clear that the kids and adults, trans and cis, really appreciated this show. I also found that the idea of the show had as much impact as the show itself. Just the idea that somebody was holding a show that was entirely focused on positive representation was making people feel better. But then when it was held in church after church after church after church, that had an even more powerful impact because that went directly against the source of a whole lot of pain that many people were feeling. Many people, religion is extremely important to them. Their church was extremely important to them. Either they were directly hurt from their church or they were being hurt by the larger community. And to have churches reach out and proactively say, we embrace you and we love you and we view you as God's children, and directly counter the negativity that was all based in God this, God that, God the other thing, was some of the most powerful aspects of this show. The people who came, including many people who were not trans, but who were gay or lesbian and walked into churches, for them, it was the first time they'd been in a church for decades. They had not left under positive circumstances. And so to walk into these churches was a big deal for them. One of my friends kept joking that she kept expecting the ceiling to fall. And then to be treated so well, to be welcomed, to be smiled at and greeted and fed was incredibly healing. It's like the world has changed. There are people on our side now. It's not the way it was when you were a child and ostracized. It was very powerful. One of the first questions that Laura put, and Gloria's questions are outstanding, is how did I get models to photograph for a possibly dangerous assignment? I reached out to all of my friends who were trans and all my friends who were mothers of trans kids and asked, would this be worth it? And most of them said yes. And a couple of them gave me a heads up that there was potential danger and that I should be aware, cognizant of it. So I created a photo release that listed every possible danger that I could think of to make sure that people understood. It also had at the top the purpose for the exhibit. One of the mothers warned me that there had been a video that someone had tried to create just a couple years earlier using trans people to mock trans people. They had told the participants, this is going to be good for the trans community. And then when the trans community found out, no, this was intended to humiliate you from the beginning, they were just wrecked. And so it needed to be very clear from the beginning, top of the release, what the purpose of this was, so that people knew what they were agreeing to. One of the things for people to select was, are you willing to have your picture in the media? Are you willing to have your picture given to journalists? And another safety measure was, what name would you like used? What location would you like used? So many people just used their first name. Some people just used their first name in their state. And some people use their first and their last name, their town and their state. My friend Oshi, who's the person on the picture right now, offered that I could come to Roanoke, Virginia, and they would arrange a whole bunch of friends for me to photo shoot. And those poor people, we had a meeting in Oshi's dining room, and they thought that I was going to hold the show in Roanoke. And they were still there. They were tense and they were clearly frightened. But when I said, no, this is going to be Montgomery County, Maryland. The worst that happens is some guy has his lawn chair out there and a sign. Everybody laughed and they breathed a sigh of relief. They were still willing to do it. But obviously it was much safer in Montgomery County, Maryland, which is where I live. I thought it would be in one church, and I thought that would be the end of it. And then it kept going and going. And each time I let my models know, this is we've been invited to be in this new church, and I would go to the church and I would take pictures of the church and some of the, symbols at the church. With one of them, they didn't really have any rainbow flags or so forth, but they had bumper stickers on the cars. And so I took pictures of the bumper stickers and said, this is the congregation that I'm proposing to show it to next. And they were willing every single time. By the way, every one of the adults did say that I could use their pictures for media. I didn't give the kids the option because I thought that was pushing it a little too far. We have 2 kids who are participants. The intended audience of the kids, the intended audience of the show is trans and non-binary kids. They're the primary audience. This is to counter the negative mental health impacts of it. But the secondary audience are trans adults, and the third intended audience are cis adults, because it's important for cis adults to have a sense of what's going on, but also to view these people as people worthy of love, people worthy of friendship, people you would like if you knew them. And with that nice little survey, I found that was really effective. The kids absolutely appreciated the show. The trans adults loved the show, but the cis adults were really moved by the joy in the pictures. They wanted to know these people. They felt more comfortable because they got to see these pictures. And frankly, it also provided an environment where they could ask the questions that they wanted to ask, but were afraid to ask. So that was good. So that's how I got models. One of the models was the child of a friend of mine. And I wrote to her saying, should I do this? Would it be worth it? And I got the impression that she just handed her cell phone to her kid. She just handed her cell phone to her kid. And I got this email back. Dear Ms. Gwen, my name is, I am the offspring of, I think this would be a good thing because. And it was so articulate and beautiful and perfect and well phrased. And oh my goodness. And so I said, would you be my formal youth advisor? Because if this is going to be for kids, then I should probably have somebody who's a youth advising me, not just my group of friends who I call my brain trust, who includes trans people, but I should have a kid. And this was clearly a mature child. And so he said yes. And then I said, would you be one of my models? And he said, yes. Would you shoot my friends too? Okay, well, at this point, we were going to go back to work because, COVID in March. So I had a deadline for when I needed all the pictures to be taken, because after that, they needed to be selected. And then after that, they needed to be printed. And so I realized I don't have time to take a picture of all your friends. And I needed to start inviting other photographers. And that's how we got Salgu and Octavia and some other people, somebody from Los Angeles, somebody from London. And one of the great ideas that the first venue had was to open it up to the community and have community bring in pictures of themselves. And so we got pictures from locals who came into the show. One of the fun things that I will show you is a board where people could bring pictures of themselves and contribute it to them. I'll go ahead and hit play so that you can see some of these. My question was, what makes you happy? What makes you feel beautiful? With Oshi, it was Oshi's home and Oshi's garden. You'll see I've got, for the pictures that I took, I tend to have multiple pictures of people. This is Al. This is Al's spouse, Mike. Mike does not like his picture being taken. Mike did not want to be there. Mike is there solely to support Al. The neat thing about it is this is the garden where they got married back when Al was presenting as female. So now they get to have pictures of themselves together with Al presenting as Al. But that, if you notice, Mike's hidden in a lot of these. And in the one that was ultimately selected, Mike and Al have their backs together. So Mike literally has Al's back. This is one of the very cool UV body paint, black light lit. And This model loved it. This model looked at that last one and said, we created a deity, an African deity, which was that one. And we titled it after an African deity that in some parts of Africa is male and some parts of Africa is female. How appropriate. Now you'll notice there are multiple pictures here. One of the insights I had was if this is for youth, then youth should get to select. And this is Seth. One of the questions then was, well, how do we do that? And so I asked for help. How should I have kids select this? And one of my friends said, how about an online survey, which turned out to be brilliant for multiple reasons. One, kids would much rather do this with their cell phones anyway. Two, it meant they could take as long as they wanted. Three, it meant that I could have kids throughout the country voting. This wasn't just local people. It wasn't just the kids that I'd heard of or the kids who were the offspring of the people I knew. I could go to the local organizations and to the kids of the offspring I knew and have everybody vote. To keep it from being corrupted, I didn't want to deal with people getting in there and trolling, so no comments were allowed. And I set it up so that you could only have one vote per voting device. So it wasn't like people could go in there and say, I hate that picture, so I'm going to vote for that picture so that your pictures suck. This is Emery, and Emery loved cosplay. And Emery loved How to Train Your Dragon. So this is Emery. Emery made this costume because Emery also loves sewing. And I bought a little stuffed toy of the dragon, which turned out to be absolutely adorable for the presentation for the exhibit. This is the one that ultimately won. And this is how it's shown, right? So we've got the picture, but then we've also got the dragon hanging right next to it. And it was very fun because the young audience, right, the kids coming to the show, love seeing Hiccup, the dragon. No, it's Toothless. Toothless is the dragon. Hiccup is the main. This is the inspiration for the show. The leaves thrown in the air were her brilliant idea. This is the loving family. This is the kid as a little kid. This is the kid as a little 4-year-old. And their mom, one of their moms just absolutely adores that picture. And I think it really adds to the exhibit. So it's part of the exhibit underneath the main picture. This is one of the other photographers from Baltimore, Octavia, contributed these pictures. Again, they were voted on. So these are the ones that won the vote. And this is the one of Octavia herself. And then Salgu. Oh my goodness. There's a photographer who's in Texas who contributed. She said, I will contribute a whole bunch of pictures. And they were exactly what I wanted. There's so much joy and happiness in these pictures. And that Salgu had taken over the years. Everybody agreed to be a part of the show. Everybody even agreed to be part of press exhibits, but I try to limit the press to the pictures that I took because I feel more secure because I actually know those models directly. But they were just perfect. One of the funny things was that I tried out the survey on adults first, and the adults tended to vote for, if there was a choice between a group picture or a single picture, the adults tended to pick the single picture. And if there was a choice between getting up close, the adults picked that, whereas the kids picked the ones that were more environmental. Just fun to have surveys going to two so that I could see the differences. This person, Eli, is actually somebody who started the first national trans youth organization in the US when she was growing up in California. And it turned out to be really neat because that horrible movie I told you about, she's the one who busted it. She's the one who found out what was actually going on and called them out and got it busted open for what was actually going on. So it was really neat that I accidentally met the person who busted it, and almost great that I met, because then I had somebody vouching for me. She met me in person. I seemed legit to her. This picture shows the curator's choice. And again, it was so beautiful to have Sandra helping me, because I went to Sandra and I said, some of the pictures that I really like, that I think are very important, didn't make the cut. They didn't get voted on, but I want them. And Sandra said, you can have a curator's choice wall. And that really fit in nicely with the idea of people contributing their own pictures. So I pre-populated the wall with some of the pictures that I thought for my personal reasons needed to be up there. Like there's a picture of the child playing with the dog. And one of the stigmas that we have in society is if you are large, you can't be physically active. If you are large, you can't be happy. So I wanted a picture of this large child playing with her dog happy on the wall so that people could see it. One of the other pictures that we had is of Lynn Conway, this is at another church where it's the same wall. Lynn Conway is one of the brilliant engineers who allowed us to have cell phones. It was her technology. When she transitioned, she was fired and had to rebuild her life. And 30 years later, she got a formal apology from the workplace. And she was an activist, and she was so incredibly gracious to me for all of this. I'm very pleased that she helped me so much. Salgu, thank you for joining us, and thank you for contributing the pictures to the show. This is one of the ones that one of the people who went to the first show contributed of her family. That child loved the stuffed animal on the wall. Immediately, the whole show was worth it because of that. About in November, I realized that I was, okay, this is going to cost a lot of money to have printed. And I found out how much it was going to cost. And fortunately and I did reach out to gay and lesbian businesses. There's a Chamber of Commerce in Baltimore, and I wasn't having tremendous success. But my friend Stevie Neal had left her estate to Pastor Jill to be used for trans events and trans advocacy. And so right about that time, Pastor Jill said, I think Stevie would have loved supporting this. Again, the luck, because probably about that time, I would have realized I'm not going to raise the money. I'm not, this is more money than I will successfully raise. And maybe about November, I would have realized I'm banging my head against a wall. It isn't going to make it. And the project would have stopped. But because of Pastor Jill being part of my brain trust, it meant that I had funding to print the pictures, which was over $4,000. And so the show happened, thanks to Stevie and thanks to Pastor Jill. Now, I also reached out to Pastor Jill, and once this was really going to happen, and asked would churches possibly be willing to show this for free? And she said yes. 2 weeks go by. Okay, can you make suggestions as to who? Because the idea of me just randomly calling churches and asking seemed a bit daunting and unlikely to succeed. And she named two. And then I went to Sandra Davis and I said, these are the two that are named. And Sandra said, Rockville UU has a hanging system. So Rockville UU is immediately my top priority. And I went and asked them. Another fun thing that I'm showing here is that I had, in addition to Stevie, I had sponsors. And so Jabari Lyles Consulting and A Friendly Bread contributed food so that we could have at our first reception food. And Jabari wanted a tax receipt so that they could claim this off their taxes, but I'm not a 401c3. And MoCo Pride was willing to be my fiduciary sponsor. Now I can tell you one of the benefits that you can get through WCA is that WCA can serve as your fiduciary response sponsor. And we will leave that discussion to Laura at the end. If you don't know about it, please make sure that that's a question that you ask. But it meant that with Moco Pride, Jabari, A Friendly Breads, and then all my friends listed here, that we were able to get money for that first reception and money starting towards a goal that I had, which was at the end of the Rockville UU, because it's only going to be shown at Rockville UU and then we're done. I'd love to send the pictures back to people. It would be just such a beautiful thank you if I could send my models their pictures and if I could send the photographers their pictures. And Salgu's on the other side of the country, so, and Roanoke is far away from me. So that was something that I was starting to work on. The church, by the way, was really impressed that I had sponsors. They hadn't had any show with sponsors before. Look at all the sandwiches he gave me. And these weren't just cheese sandwiches. These were fancy cheese sandwiches. You got to feed people. That's how they come to love you, is you feed them. This is Rockville UU. As you can see, what a perfect place to have the first show at, right? They're clearly very dedicated. This is not special for this show. They have this stuff up all the time. And that hanging system, the bomb. And I think it's just like the new one at Sandy Spring. This is Sherry helping me to hang up the pictures. And it's so easy. And we had lots of people coming and helping to hang them up, helping to decide where the pictures should go. It was a collaborative effort to decide which picture where, on what wall, in what order. One of the things that Sandra gave me so many great tips. Sandra told me what questions to ask the church and what answers to give to the church. So when I had the conversation with the church, it went beautifully. It could not have gone better because I was so well prepared, thanks to Sandra. Another tip that Sandra gave me was I needed a didactic. I didn't even know what a didactic was. So thank goodness. Other people were very impressed. They didn't even know how to ask, are you going to have an explanation of what this is? And I said, you mean a didactic? And they didn't know the words either, so they were terribly impressed that there was a word for it and that I had one. So thank you again to Sandra. And Sandra warned me that I needed a presentation, which had not occurred to me. And then Rockville UU was, we're going to have this event. We're going to have this opening event. Of course you're going to do this. This is all your fault. Of course you're giving a presentation. So I was warned in advance. And this is Sandra. One of the big things that made this possible was I got positive press coverage. I had written my nice 3-page proposal, and it was very formal, and it talked about the mental health impacts of all the negative publicity and negative legislation. And it said that having positive pictures would help to counter it. And I interviewed my friend who just happens to be a therapist who focuses on teens. So, I get my nice subject matter expert to give me some beautiful quotes who said, if every picture is 1,000 words, then these are thousands and thousands of words of people that trans kids can connect with, can identify with, saying there is hope. And the newer thing in psychology, especially for kids who are thinking about harm, is hope, is to counter with hope, is not to focus just on the negative, but to use hope as a protectant against suicide. That was all great. Nobody read it. They appreciated getting the 3-page proposal. They felt, it was more formal. They felt like it was a little more legit, but nobody read it. And if they did read it, they didn't remember it. Jenny Bixby's news articles. those were captivating. They had beautiful pictures. It's sunshiny. It's happy. That helped me get the second sponsor. It helped me get more. It helped me get more pictures. It helped me get a lot more. That was sort of the turning point where people trusted this. Before, one of the aspects was I'm not trans, so why would anybody trust me? And they didn't. There was a great deal of suspicion of me. What are you doing? Who are you? Why? Why would I trust my picture to you or model for you? Jenny's news article completely changed it. 100%, because it was written for people, not this boring text that went on for pages and pages. One of the great things. So that picture with the math equation is mine. And then Octavia and her boo, Isaiah, and they're all friends. And so they were so happy to go to the show and see that their pictures were next to each other. And this was taken by my model's mom. And it's one of my favorite pictures from the entire process, actually, because they're so happy to see their pictures up. And then my plans to have this end after the first show were ruined because Pastor Jill said, I'd like this to be held at my church where I am the interim pastor. And so it was. But then wait, because somebody went to a special event at the first church and wanted the picture shown at their church. So now we've got a third church. But wait, the parents of the initial inspiration were annoyed that this was happening at 3 other churches and hadn't been held in their church. So they wanted it held in their church. But then wait, some people came to the second church and they wanted it held in their church. And so it wound up being held at the 5th church in Virginia, which was cool because we crossed the line where you need a passport in order to go over there. And then Susan wanted to have it shown in her church. So we're going to have it in 6 churches minimum. And we don't even know when the end date is going to be because it keeps getting extended. It was held in a gallery. Somebody came to the first showing and asked if I would be willing to hold it in the gallery. I said, sure. And she said it wouldn't be until March of 2025. And I'm like, oh, I have to hold on to the pictures until then. I had no idea it would still be hanging and going as an active exhibition. Turned out to be perfect. And then that model in the previous picture who had the math equation, his mom lives in Baltimore and is friends with the Baltimore photographer and really wanted it held in Baltimore and connected me with Third Space, which is an absolutely gorgeous synagogue in Baltimore. And that's how it got held in Baltimore. So this is the second venue. They had hung that flag up and it was stolen. And then they hung it up again and it was stolen. So they hung it up at the very top of the roof, figuring, try to steal it now. This is Pastor Jill helping to hang up this picture. They didn't have the space and they wanted the pictures a little protected, so it needed to fit into this room. And one of their members provided this hanging system that she uses to sell her art. And we managed to get everything. And Jill made a sign. Oh, one of the things I learned, this is going to be so obvious to every one of you, but it wasn't obvious to me. Salgu had text for all of their pictures. I had labels. Salgu had text. So at the first show, I got to watch everybody reading every word of Salgu's text for every one of the pictures. Like, oh, people really like text. So I went and added text for future shows for the rest of my pictures. There we go. The experience for the models. Somebody asked, probably Laura, what this was like for the models. And at least with mine, and I think, how do you get smiles like that if you're not making it a good time for them? They really loved it. I mean, you're saying you're so beautiful. You're so important. You're so special. I want to take a picture of you. And I want to share it with the world. And this person in particular had 3 babies and really enjoyed the self-esteem boost of being beautiful and having these pictures taken of them. And certainly loved having such exciting, dramatic pictures. And again, I had said as my prompt, what makes you happy, what makes you beautiful? And Phoenix said to be one with the universe. And I said, ooh, what about UV body paint and black light? And it looks like this. Head over heels, so delighted. And then personally invited to come and be a speaker at one of the events. This is a big deal because I don't have a truck. And so every time it needed to get transported, I needed to call on the kindness of strangers, which was not so hard if it was on a weekend, but if it needed to happen during the week, the good news is all my friends had been terminated from their employment by that time. So I at least had unemployed friends to help. But see how tightly we have packed that Subaru? And then imagine us driving. We can't see out the back. This is us going to Baltimore with the car filled that tightly. One of the nice things that happened was it was an opportunity to raise the profile of other photographers. So they're mentioned and thanked on the website. They're mentioned and thanked in every news article. And because Octavia is at least driving distance, Octavia got some nice press in Virginia and got to be part of a panel discussion and got an honorarium, and then got an honorarium and a gig in Baltimore at the synagogue, which was, just fantastic exposure. I am not doing photography for a living. Octavia is trying to do photography for a living. So it was really nice that we could do that. The end of the slideshow. What was the impact? So now we've covered who's going to display this. Do we have any other questions? Any questions that you'd like to ask about this exciting event?
All right, I'm going to bring you up here. And here comes Sandra at the very end. Okay, Maya, you have a question? Can unmute yourself.
I just wanted to know, how you found other, photographers, other artists to contribute to your exhibition. How did you just locate them? How did you post the call for art?
It was hard. It was stressful. It was scary because I'm cold calling all of them. All of them. So Salgu is on the line. Salgu's minding their own business, and suddenly there's an email because I'm hunting down, I'm using keywords and finding them on the internet, and then saying, "Hey, I'm doing a show. Would you contribute some pictures?" And of course, they're not getting compensated, but it is for a greater good. So the good news is contributing to this is supposed to help. The idea is that it's going to help kids, and kids really need help. The impact has been very bad. I could give you the statistics, but it would be very depressing. But it's been really rough on the kids, and that was a couple of years ago. So I have to assume that it is way rougher now, as legislation and more legislation and evil legislation is happening. And one of the things that I realized while talking with my formal youth advisor was, given their age, 15, they've only been sentient for so many years. I'm 56. I've seen things get better. If you're 15, did you see anything get better? About the time you started being conscious of the world, you just saw things get worse and worse and worse and worse. You didn't see things get better. So it just felt like the trajectory was bad, and that's really negative. So it was something that I think all of the photographers I reached out to understood the importance of. They understood that the kids were suffering. And I believe that that's one of the key reasons why Salgu contributed and why Octavia contributed and why my friend Rowley contributed. Rowley is not even trans, but a lot of people understood the import of helping the kids, the need to help the kids now. I suspect that part of what drew Salgu, and Salgu is here, Salgu can actually answer, was the connection between churches and this, because it really is important, and it's been a source of pain for some of the people in my brain trust, but for a whole lot of other people too. I've had people cry. I've had people cry that something so positive was happening. And I had somebody come to the church in Virginia right as we're packing things up. Like, this is the very last day, the very last minute of the last part of this show. We're packing things up. They come in just as we're ending it, and they see it and started to cry. Mm. So, Salgu, am I right that, yes, food is important. Salgu, am I right that the divinity aspect was a part of it for you?
Yes. I don't know how to make my camera come on, but yes, oh, there we go. All right. Am I on now?
We can hear you, but we can't see you. There we go. We can hear you and see you.
Yes, a lot of my personal work is about the intersection of queer identity and faith. And so I have some of my own projects documenting that intersection. So I think when you reached out, you had already known that it was gonna be displayed in a church space. So that definitely intrigued me. One of my photos in the show is a trans pastor that's included in there. And so, but yeah, I mean, all of my work, everything Gwen said about, photos have power, and seeing joyful photos has a significant impact, especially on trans youth. And I liked how you mentioned it gives them hope, which all of us need in this time right now. And so definitely I was honored to be a part of the show and to have the younglings, select several of my images. I was, very happy to contribute. And I love that it continued to travel, church hop around, the area. You're just an inspiration with my own work. I'm also hoping to show it in church spaces and have it church hopped. I'm like, I know it's possible because Gwen did it. So you just need to get that one, and then, someone will find out, and then, they'll invite you to the next one. So we'll have to talk later about how that process went for you. But yeah, it was a great honor to be part of it, for sure.
Thank you. Lucy, you had your hand up. Got to unmute yourself.
I just have a sort of a practical question about insurance. How did you handle that at the different galleries and in transporting and storing works?
Well, the bad news is I didn't have space in my garage, so I couldn't store them all in my garage. Fortunately for me, Pastor Jill was interim pastor of the Bethesda Church, and the Bethesda Church agreed to store them for me before we put them up there, and then after we put them up there, so in between. Thank goodness, Pastor Jill had a little pickup truck. Mm-hmm. Pastor Jill, one of her friends said she's the dykest straight woman that she's met. So, the good news is the pickup truck held the pictures perfectly, and she just happened to have access to the church, which has lots of room. So we had a whole bunch of boxes with pictures in them stored in one of the corners of the room. And, after a while, you just stop seeing it. So even though it was a room that people used, they didn't mind. And then she stored it for another place. And then fortunately, the synagogue was willing to store the extra boxes while we had the pictures up, which is really good because I don't think we could have gotten them back in the Subaru ourselves. It was such a mind game. To get them all to successfully in that car the first time, I don't think we could have done it a second time. Right now, they're at Sandy Spring, which has me so relieved because I don't have to worry about them now because they're there, they're safe, they're going to be hosted there for the next one. Now, it could be that Sandy Spring is the last one, but a friend of mine has asked her cousin, who is a minister, and if it could be that it goes to that church as well at the end, and then everybody gets their pictures back. But at this point, it's been so popular that I don't know. So again, using help, using people's help, asking for help.
That's wonderful. I'd like to add for the insurance thing, Lucy, that I'm often like through WCA New Hampshire, and then I also am a volunteer gallery coordinator for a movie theater gallery here in town. We just say there is no insurance. And so people have to make that decision. And it is maybe on one or two small occasions I've had people pull work. It's just making them aware ahead of time. And especially for something like an activist show, people are willing to take the risk because they want the work shown. So I think as long as you're really upfront about the fact that you don't have insurance, that part is important, but I haven't really found that to be a barrier. Some venues require you have insurance as an organization. But again, I haven't run into that. That's a whole different thing. And usually, the churches have liability insurance for if someone goes over something or does something or something falls down and hits them in the head. So, that sort of thing.
Thank you.
Are there other questions? I'm just so impressed by this project, Gwen, how you really started absolutely not knowing anything. And Sandra's like, you can put on a show, and with her mentoring you, and then it really has, it's an amazing exhibit. The positivity that you've experienced from it is beautiful. I have my oldest daughter's trans. She's in her 30s. And I liked what you said about the 15-year-old not understanding. My daughter kind of was in the thing where, gay marriage came in and all this kind of stuff. And we had kind of an upward trajectory. Of course, it's going back down again now. But also as she's older, she has more kind of a strength inside to be able to face a lot of this. She's very sure and confident of herself. But seeing positive images, and whereas the other, I'm going to say side, likes to kind of talk about, suicide rates and all of this. And, the fact of the matter is, if anyone has a supportive network, people who love them, people who support them, they will do much better and be in a much better place. And just seeing these things these images on a church wall means a lot, I think. And it's very inspiring.
Thank you. I also found that my cis hetero male friends were also startled and impressed and pleased that I had all these church showing it.
Yes. And we have to remember too, a lot of people, I'm kind of living in it, and you are too, and a lot of people here as well. But a lot of people, they've never met a trans person. They don't even know anyone who has a relative or a friend. And so having these sorts of exhibits showing the positive aspect, people are happy, they're living their lives, they're doing good things, I think is really important.
And doing, this person is an engineer. You could be an engineer. This person is a photographer. You could be. One of the cute things I realized too late that I should ask, what are you concerned about? And so I asked you, but I had enough time to ask Emery, what are you concerned about? And Emery was concerned about being able to get a job. And so I mentioned this to Eli, And Eli said, yes, you should have pictures of people in active professions, and they should be active because nobody wants a picture of us at the computer. Well, the math equation is a math teacher. Mm-hmm. And he said, I'm going to break your heart. I teach through the computer. And I said, reality is overrated. So I was so happy to have Sal Guzminister. Sal Guzminister is active. The arms are spread out. That is the most joyous, active picture you can get. We've got a couple of photographers on the curator's wall. We've got Octavia, a photographer, picture of themselves on the wall. We've got my math teacher on the wall. Al is an engineer, so that's listed. Eli is a model, so that's listed. So all these beautiful professions that also say you can get employed, you'll be able to get employed, high probability of that. What I would have loved would have been more pictures of families. And I think the creme de la creme would have been a grandparent with a grandbaby. Like, does it get better than that? So thank goodness for the curator's wall so people can contribute their own pictures of babies and children. Mm-hmm. And if I could have had one more picture, I would have had one of a martial artist. I thought that would be beautiful because even when you have supportive messaging, the messaging tended to be, oh, these poor people, let's help them. It wasn't, oh, look at these cool magical beings, right? It was, and so it was positive because it wasn't hateful, but it wasn't positive because it's still rooted in sadness and misery. And my pictures are all happiness, and all of Salgu's pictures are happiness. And then some of Octavia's is like, oh, who is that person? And they look magical, like you practically have stars falling around them. So I was absolutely bound and determined that it was going to be exclusively positive, right? Happiness, sunshine, and rainbows. And that was in itself a bit of a head twist for people because they weren't used to, even my trans models were not used to that. And even positive, happy people, I have to give a presentation. Sandra said I had to, and then Rockville you confirmed it. Yes, you have to give a presentation. What am I going to say? We have just confirmed that Next killed themselves. What do we say now that's positive? And this is going to be positive. So I made the entire speech a thank you, which worked. I was able to talk about the importance, and I was able to keep it focused on gratitude. And anything that was negative, I sort of kept as an undercurrent because we had kids there too. Everybody understood what I was doing, but I was adamant that this was going to be positive and only positive. Mm-hmm. That also meant that security measures had to be positive, only positive. And I've traveled a lot.
That a little bit because about the security aspect that you kind of worked on.
Yes, I've traveled enough so that I know that having a nice man there with a gun doesn't make you feel safe. Mm-hmm. He may be there to protect you, but the fact that he's there with a gun immediately means you feel endangered. And so I didn't want any of the security measures to be visible. There's a trans organization that works with youth in Virginia, and I got to talk with Reverend Emma, who completely agreed. She was very relieved. She said that she would have been concerned if I wasn't concerned about security. But what she did for one of her events, they had invited a trans cartoonist who had already received death threats. The church board heard that and said, oh, no, we're having security or this isn't happening. The trans community said, you have cops there, we're not coming. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, what do we do? So she had the police come and she told them to be discreet. So she sees in the parking lot some big black vehicles with tinted windows. So who is that? She goes up to the big black vehicles. Hello? And the window goes down and they're all in SWAT. Right? Like they are fully decked for murder and mayhem, but they're staying inside the vehicle and they're not going to come out unless there's a problem. Okay, so Reverend Rebecca Savage of Rockville UU is friends with the sheriff. So what we decided to do was ask the sheriff to have the police officers just patrol in the area. If you could just be doing lots of drive, but don't hang out. But if you could be doing lots of drive-bys. With the second church, Reverend Jill and Pastor Jill and I discussed this at length, and her first thought was, "Oh, I know, we're going to have Karen do this because Karen is in the military. I guess not anymore, but at the time, and Karen was going to set us up." And I said, "It's important that all measures be invisible, because if they're not invisible, it changes the tone. People don't feel safe anymore." And she stopped and she went, "Maybe not Karen," because Karen would have rolled the tank in, right? So again, she was very good friends with the police. She always let the police park in the parking lot when they were in between gigs and needed to, be located someplace. She'd give them explicit permission to park in the parking lot, come in, use the bathrooms, whatever. So they knew the church. They were familiar with the church. They were happy with the church, and were happy to be driving around in the area on the day of the reception. Mm-hmm. The third church had no concerns at all. The fourth church, I had a number of meetings before they finally agreed to do it. And one of the first questions were, "What problems have you had?" And I said, "None." And that was a total shock. The person was not expecting me to say, "We haven't had any." We'd all been assuming in our fear that there was going to be a problem. And the fact that we didn't, well, one, we're in a really nice area here. If we were in another part of the country, it might have been different. But two, we were in churches. And I know that churches have been attacked over the last few years, but it's still a taboo to attack a church. And it is a taboo to attack a nice white Christian church. And if you're going to attack a nice white Christian church in the suburbs, you've got a plan, because it's not exactly accessible. You've got to find them. It's a pain. Do you really hate people that much? Sometimes. But fortunately, we hadn't. Their concern was they had put up a flag the previous year, and somebody came and cut the flag, and they felt hurt. They had never had an act like that of vandalism on them. And so they were asking me about the security measures, and I discussed the release, the photo release, and that helped them to realize your church is not what's at risk. The models are the ones who are taking a risk. Mm-hmm. The models are the ones who are endangering themselves. And I didn't say that, but I didn't have to say that. They realized it in the course of my explanation. And then they talked amongst themselves, and they decided that holding the show was living their values, and that was what was important to them. It made a big difference that they had known the child since she was in utero, right? Because her parents had been attending that church so long that they knew the kid while he was still inside mom's belly. And they had watched her grow up, and they wanted to show this love, but it was a very big concern. The fifth church, not the least bit worried, none. And there weren't any problems, and there weren't any measures either. I think they were just so far out of the way that they couldn't visualize anything happening. The synagogue had a security guard, but they always have a security guard. Because
so they were just used to always having that security guard anyhow.
Yes. And I'll say that was the friendliest security guard I've ever met in my life. Yeah. He was smiling. His body was flexible and relaxed. Like, he was not scary in any way. And everybody at the synagogue was used to there being security there as a matter of course.
Nice. Yes, thank you for sharing that, because I think that component was important to talk about. I also am super impressed that you made a kid be one of your advisors. Because as adults, we know better, right? And I think that's amazing, because I have a feeling that is going to be something that stays with that child, that really empowered that person for the rest of your life. You think back to when you were a child and you were given some sense of like important responsibility. It really does form you and change you. And I think I'm impressed because a lot of adults don't listen to the children. You made this so that children could see positive role models. And I don't know, I just loved that aspect of your project.
Thank you. I liked that kids throughout the country, even if they didn't get to see the exhibit, got to see the pictures and feel efficacy voting.
Mm-hmm.
It meant that they knew that it was happening. Yay, this cool thing is happening. Hey, you're a part of it.
Right. Yeah. Wonderful. All right. Do we have any other questions? Any other comments? Well, everyone's very quiet today.
If we don't, then I would like to express my gratitude to WCA and to Sandra for helping to make this happen. I've had so much luck with the entire thing, from beginning to what will eventually be the conclusion. And Sandra gave me a D for self-promotion after Rockville UU, so I hope that I've gotten maybe a C now.
Well, it sounds like you're trotting it around pretty well. So I would give you an A. Just it keeps traveling. So Deborah, you just came into the very end of the presentation. I'm sad to say.
Oh, I thought it started at 1. I had it wrong in my calendar. Then.
Started at 1 Eastern time. What time are you at?
I'm Central Time.
Oh, you know what? It's all been recorded. And it will be up on the WCA website in about a week and a half. And I would highly encourage you to watch it because this
Thank you.
Wonderful and informative and inspiring, very inspiring.
I thought this was the art activism pod.
That was last week. Sorry.
Never mind. Anyway, I will go on and watch
First Saturday Art Activism Pod, second Saturday program, second Saturday.
Thank you.
So
Okay.
This did become activism.
it really, so to that point, I am going to push this video to the Art Activism Pod. And if you are free the first Saturday of the month, next month, I would love if you could just come and give us like a 10-minute little snapshot of your project, because I think it would be really inspiring to everyone who is attending. It will give them a really wonderful snapshot about an activism project that really has had a huge amount of success.
Is that at 1 or is that at 12 Central?
It's at 1 Eastern, so 12 Central. Yes.
Oh, okay. I don't know how I do these things. Okay, thank you.
Okay, don't worry about it. We all do it. So anyhow, thank you so much for coming, Gwen. Thank you everyone for attending. Spread the word, and good luck. I have a feeling this project will not end anytime soon. Trotting things around in your Subaru forever. I highly recommend the purchasing of a minivan if you ever get to it.
Moving it from Baltimore back, I contacted a friend of mine who had a van, and I said, I know you live in Virginia, and I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I need you.
Minivans are great. So anyhow, thank you so much, everybody, for coming. Oh, very quickly, the next, if I get myself organized here, our next second Saturday will be, I'm going to put these in the chat, an introduction to art residencies with Sawyer Rose, who just recently did an art residency at Yaddo. And then in November 8th, our Young Women's Caucus will be doing a presentation entitled Survival Guide for Women Artists, a Crash Course. So we can hear from the younger women in our organization about how they are pulling together their art careers. So I think that will be very, very wonderful. And we take a break in December, and stay tuned. I'm meeting with the programming committee coming up next week. And hopefully we will have at least the beginning part of the year for 2026 planned in just a couple months. And we'll make a big announcement in December about that. So we soldier on. Thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of your day. Thanks. Bye-bye.